Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Doc NYC. Welcome to the beautiful SVA Theater. I'm John Vanko. I'm the general manager of IFC Center, and one of the things we've always tried to do is seek out really great films about culture in the village, because we really feel it's part of our responsibility to shine a light on some of the great cultural contributions made by village residents. And so we've had great runs with documentaries, feature documentaries about Pete Seeger, Paul Simon, Phil Oakes, Harry Belafonte, several films about Bob Dylan. And so we're very excited about this film and happy to see a big audience, even though we're not quite in the village here. Thanks for coming uptown. And we have some special guests here this afternoon. We're going to be doing a Q&A after the show. We'll have director Laura Archibald, as well as several people featured in the film. So please keep your seats after the show. I also want to let you know we have a lot of fine music documentaries in Doc NYC this year. So please grab a catalog on the way out. Tomorrow we have a documentary about David Bromberg, and he will be here. So please check that out in the catalog. And without further ado, I'm going to bring up the producer of Greenwich Village, music that defined a generation, to introduce the film. Please welcome producer Joe Sakala.
I'd first like to thank the Academy. No, I'm sorry, we have to wait for the spring for that. I can't thank the Academy yet, and on behalf of Laura, we want to thank all of you for being here this afternoon, but most important for Doc Film Festival for honoring Laura, for what she's put into this movie into this documentary over the last 3 years, and the fact that they've accepted what she's done for this festival. We want you to sit back and enjoy 90 minutes of something that is a part of history that brought me, in some measure, to where I am today because of what Laura has put on film. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you all for staying. Please welcome Laura Archibald. Well, we were unsure when we talked before who all would be joining us. So do you want me to bring up the people we talked about?
Yes, sir.
All right. So please welcome Lucy Simon. Here she comes. Doug Yeager is here. Terri Thal is right over here. And Melanie is here. And Joe Sakala is also here, and he's going to come back up. I just wanted to ask Laura if you could talk about the genesis of this project, because you know, we've all seen so many historical documentaries, and I think that the story behind you know, the footage that you discovered and the people that you talked to in the journey of making the film. I'm just very curious what that was like to go through, and what made you decide to start the film in the first place.
Well, it was an amazing journey, and I first of all want to thank everyone for coming here tonight, and certainly the people that are here that I interviewed. It wouldn't have happened without everyone that was involved, including the people behind the scenes. So the journey was amazing. I have not one negative thing to say about it. And I guess the impetus was really about talking about all of the other artists that were in the village at that time, in that decade, not just focusing on one or two people, but to really embrace everyone that went through the village and tell a complete story as best I could.
And were you sourcing mostly from archives and news organizations, or were you also dealing with individual filmmakers who had their own footage that they shared?
Mostly archive footage. Occupy NYC. Do we have Sandy here? I think Sandy. So, but it was actually very hard to find footage, not performance footage, but footage of just people walking through the streets and the architecture and what was going on. That was probably a real challenge, I think.
So the question is, where was Joan Baez?
Maybe someone else will have a comment. My comment is Joan Baez was actually from the Cambridge scene, really not the Greenwich Village scene, and I think it's a misnomer that people think that she was here. In fact, when I interviewed Steve Earle, I mentioned something about Joan Baez, and he had just produced one of her later LPs that she had just done, and he said the truth is that she never even went in Bob Dylan's apartment. So she didn't live here. She wasn't really from the village, and but she was a folk singer. So this is more, we're focusing more on people coming through Greenwich Village, really.
And about Tim Harden, what about
Tim Harden, I think we had a photo of Tim, and of course there are hundreds of people that were missed, of course, for various reasons, but I think there was a photo of Tim or two.
What is what? I know the song, but
What did it mean to you?
oh, it inspired. Oh my goodness! As I was leaving Woodstock, I wrote this song, and it was the I had waited all day at the site in a very lower echelon tent with a dirt floor. And it wasn't a, this is a long story. Should we do this? All right. All right. It was rain, you know, it began to rain. Every other person that went on, they would come over to me and say, "You're next." And I'm, oh my God. I mean, I'd never sung for more than 500 people in my whole life. And I wasn't on the radio except Roscoe playing me on underground at WNEW FM. And that was it. And maybe a half a percentage of the entire assembled knew anything about me whatsoever. And so the terror mounted as each hour passed. Day one, I watched and heard Richie Havens sing. I heard the panic in his voice. Maybe other people got other things, but I knew he was scared. And it was happening to me, and it was mounting and mounting. And by the time I actually did go on, by the way, my Woodstock moment was Joan Baez heard me coughing. I developed this deep bronchial, evil cough, demonic. And it was from nervousness, and it kept going. And Joan Baez, she was in the upper echelon tent with access to hot water, I suppose, and she sent me a pot of tea. This beatific girl said, "I'm with Joan Baez, and she heard you coughing and thought you might like this." That was my Woodstock moment. But after I finally got on stage, are you sorry you asked this yet? Okay. When I finally got on stage, the hog farm had started to pass out candles with some inspirational message, and I don't know what it was, but when I got on after Ravi Shankar, I watched the hillside light up with candles. And I don't say this often, but I, in actual fact, had an out-of-body experience before I went on. And I left myself, and I watched myself sing. I was silent, and then at one point, I sensed it was safe, and I came back, and I watched the hillside light up with candles, and I felt this flow of human connectedness, and that image will never leave me, and that's the image that inspired the song Candles in the Rain.
Wow.
Thank you.
The editing was the only thing I didn't touch. No. I think the way my mind works, I had to break everything into chapters. And the questions that I asked of everyone here, most of them were similar, but again, the responses were always different. And the path that they led me on varied a little bit, and it would be, okay, I've got to include this whole concept here. And then the next person I interviewed, I would add a question or change it a wee bit. So it was just a matter of making sure that all the information in that decade was covered as best as, not that I could cover it, but that everyone was talking about the same things because they were living that same experience from that period of time. So just breaking it down into subject matter, I think, was the easiest way to do it. And then the editors, of course, we just had to extract whatever we could that made sense and make it flow somehow. It was huge jigsaw puzzle. And we tried to include as many people as we could. I think I interviewed about 32 people. So. What about Bob? How many times? I actually, you know, I wanted to do this and include everyone else except Bob Dylan, because I thought that there had been documentaries and books and everything under the sun on Bob Dylan. And what happened was everyone started talking about Bob Dylan. And so that was another question. I threw in a Bob Dylan question. I did call his manager because I thought, I'm not going to get around this. And nice fellow, Jeff Rosen, he said, when hell freezes over. And then he laughed. But I knew the answer. He just doesn't do interviews, but I had to do my due diligence and made the effort, and the answer was no. But we have the songs in there, so you know that somewhere he's watching and knows about this. Well, it's just the whole 60s, the Pink Panther idea of just, it's very hard to make a Talking Heads documentary interesting. So animation was a way to go, and making sure I included humor with some of the interviews, and just to lighten it up a bit.
The question is a what-if question for the people who lived through it. What might they have changed about what they did back then?
What I might have changed about it. No, I misunderstood that question, but I thought it was such a privilege to live through that, to be part of that generation and experience. And one of the things that I felt when I was watching this wonderful documentary was the musicality of the time was so melodic. The folk era was so melodic. And then when many more instruments and electronics came in, you tended to lose the melody. And it's wonderful to see that evolution and how we've come through it, and who is the prime singer now in this generation. It's Adele, and she sings from the heart. And I think that what happened in the 60s was that we were all singing and writing from our hearts. We were not in the music business in the way that it washed over us and washed over our humanity, which is I said, and I'm so happy to see it returning. And on Broadway, what is the show that won the Tony last year? It was Once. It's the folk, it's the people who are speaking from their hearts, and it was lovely to see the beginnings of that in this film.
What Lucy said, and with everyone here on stage and all the performers and singers and songwriters in the documentary, is that sitting here along with these wonderful and magnificent artists is someone who was the antithesis of that era. And friends of mine, knowing that I had gotten involved in this with Laura, were a little concerned, considering that I'm a Marine, and my time in the service was from 67 to 72. And I had a 43rd anniversary reunion in June with my fellow officers from the 68-69 era. And I announced at that time of what Laura had done and what we were opening here, hopefully. We didn't hear from Docket yet at that time. And they were saying, how could you be involved with this, Joe? I said, it's amazing, guys, and this is warriors. Every one of us, we still are to this day, maybe on the other side, but we're still warriors. And I said to them, if you think for a minute that the music that they gave us, and I'm getting chills here, and my wife said, please, whatever you do, don't get choked up and cry up there. But it was the music that they gave us that we didn't consider it so much protest music of that era, because that's not how we looked at it. When we were overseas and we were in various climes and places, this was the music that kept us going. And we didn't think that they were against us. We saw other things against us. In 68, after Tet and all those other things that took place with Martin Luther King and RFK and everything, we weren't here for that. And we looked upon what they gave us as a joy and a treasure. And for many of us, the reason I'm involved is because it's still with us to this day.
I had a wish list, I suppose, and I'll be honest, there is music I like. There's music, I mean, not all of it's my kind of music, and that's an honest statement. So there were definitely artists that I was born in '59, so by the late '60s, early '70s, that was my music. So yes, I gravitated towards that sound, but again, I couldn't pick and choose or be too biased because it's not a documentary film anyway. I had to include everyone from '61 is where I really started, and go all the way through. So from my wish list, every time I interviewed someone, they may say, have you talked to so-and-so? And, well, I didn't think about that. Okay, and you try and get a hold of people. They were either touring, they were busy, they were ill, a number of reasons why you couldn't get certain people. I had very few no's, and I'm not going to tell you who the no's were, but, well, I told you one, but everyone was just, you know, the people sitting here and everyone I spoke to, I can't say it enough that they were just so generous with their time, and I think that came across with every interview that you saw. People just wanted to talk about that period of time and what was going on, and I was just very fortunate to have these artists in front of me, and it was a privilege on my part, for sure.
I'm hopeful that you'll tell all your friends about this film, because I have a feeling this movie is going to be back on screen in the Village sometime in the next couple months. So please tell other people. It's a great experience to share on screen. Take it away, Joe.
Again, you're used to me 15, 20 minutes, another less than 60 seconds. 3 great days in history occurred today. The opening of Laura Archibald's film and these famous and magnificent artists who gave it to us. Secondly, I never, without a doubt, I'll always bring that up. It's the 237th anniversary of the United States Marine Corps. And lastly, which I forgot until earlier today, but on this day, on the Marine Corps birthday, coming home from the service in uniform, was the day I asked my wife to marry me 40 years ago. So we thank all of you for being here. Please tell everyone about it. And again, applause up here on stage, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.